Believing in himself, Han Yu-jin began to fantasize about how he would save his own with his power and imagined, their city is attacked by a dragon. Everything is on fire. Han Yu-hyun and his comrades can't cope, and they start shouting, "Ah, it's too strong! It's over!" When the dragon was about to attack again with its fiery breath, Han Yu-hen noticed and shouted out a warning to everyone. "The moment you touch the deadly poison that this dragon releases, stand back, all of you!" As soon as he said this, his elder brother Han Yu-jin jumped in front of him and covered him with his body. Seeing his elder's actions, Han Yu-hyun cried out in alarm. "No! Brother!" Looking back at his younger brother, Han Yu-jin looked at him with a heroic gaze and said confidently, "Brother is here. What about the deadly poison?" With his body covering his brother's, Han Yu-jin spoke pompously as he straightened his hair. "This is just a refreshing shower for a true hunter." When Han Yu-hyun saw his brother, he was astonished. "Brah! Cool!" Imagining this story, he added, "The beginning of the legend of the Dragon Slayer, Han Yu-jin. Wow, this is incredible. I'll become the strongest hunter just like that, and I'll live a great life." As Han Yu-jin fantasized about the glory he could achieve, he began to look for his parameters, anticipating something incredible and thinking, "So I've become an S-class as well? Or is this the first L-class?" Opening his skills tab, the boy saw very disappointing results. His parameters had the following characteristics: endurance, 6, strength, 4, dexterity, 5, intelligence, 4, mana, 2. Seeing such unimpressive characteristics, the boy, disappointed in his skills, realized that his story of being the best dragon hunter had become just an unattainable dream. Realizing that all his fantasies were just a pipe dream, Han Yu-jin held his head and rested it sadly on the table, thinking, "My body is the same as it was before. How can I use all these skills?" Saddened that his expectations had been dashed, even though he had gained such cool skills, his basic characteristics remained the same. He looked at his characteristics and thought, "Of course, this time there is nothing special about me either." When he looked at the skills he had besides the ones he had gained from slaying the dragon, he saw dexterity, E, and intelligence, E. Seeing this, he continued to think, the buffs are for the E-class agility and intelligence skills. They are also similar to the previous skills. Looking back at what he had before, he saw that there was still one skill that had improved, and that was the nurturer skill. Then he thought, and the title of educator, it is also changed to L-class. Clicking on the skill, he saw that there were also 4 sub-items with abilities. As they appeared, he thought, 4 skills as well. After looking through them, Han Yu-jin decided to disable one of them, thinking, last thanks, L. It would be better not to use this. What is this? Why are all the talent names so vile? Looking at the skills, he said, let's see, my baby is the best. The first skill, my baby is the best, L. Accelerated growth of the object that was influenced by hearing the code word. The effect lasts for 3 days. Thinking that there was something familiar about this skill, he said, it's somewhat similar to the previous nurturer. But as far as the growth rate is concerned, as he delved deeper into the details of the skill, he exclaimed in surprise, what-oh, twice as fast? As he exclaimed, he caught the attention of his younger self, who was preparing dinner. Continuing to review his skills further, he said, so, Yu Hang melts twice as fast and stronger than other hunters. What if we use it in conjunction with this skill? The second skill, our child is incredible, SS. If you support the object of education with a code word in front of more than 5 creatures with intelligence that can perceive the code word, if you say the code word in front of 5 or more people, the abilities and effects of the skill of the tutored object will increase relative to the number of sentient beings with intelligence. The maximum is 100%. After reading the description of this skill more carefully, Han Yu-jin thought, so if I support Yu Hang in front of 50 people, he will become 1.5 times stronger. And in front of 100 people, then the effect will be 100%. In other words, he will become twice as strong. Han Yu-jin thought about this. With this skill, it's only a matter of time before my younger brother Yu Hang becomes the strongest. No, not just Yu Hang, but by using it on the other abyssal hunters as well. Thinking of this, he could already imagine the reactions of the people who would exclaim, wah, an abyss. The abyss is twice as fast and twice as strong. Abyss, which had grown into the strongest guild in just a few years. Han Yu-jin imagined how he could become the best again through another method. Just like that, I will be reborn as the abyssal tutor who raised them. Imagining how he would become the king of a guild where everyone would love and respect him, and he would be bathed in luxury. He thought, if that happens, I will live a life of luxury all my life, but I will only be able to lick honey. Thinking about this, Han Yu-jin immediately felt down. His plans had gone awry again. It was because he saw the code word that he would have to say to the Abyss members. And that word is love. Seeing this code word, Han Yu-jin began to bang his head on the table, attracting the younger man's attention, but not understanding why he was doing it, while thinking, why such a terrible word? Remembering the moment when he hugged his brother, Han Yu-jin thought, so the code word changed during the awakening. It happened when he was speaking to his younger brother. My younger brother, Han Yu-hyun, I love you. Imagining how he would say this to everyone around him to put a boost on them, or how he could do it in another way by combining it with actions, Han Yu-jin thought, although going around like this, throwing around a code word like this, Han Yu-jin thought that he might just get arrested for harassing ordinary passersby if he did this, and then he thought sadly, it's not like I'm going to raise them, I'll definitely get arrested. After analyzing all the strengths and weaknesses of this skill, Han Yu-jin said sadly, nonsense, it's useless. I can't use it. The skill itself is good, though. After that, it was time for the last skill, Promising Sprout. Promising Seedling, S. After reading the characteristics, he said, I can check the probable class of unawakened people. Can objects under the influence of a code word awaken with optimal talents? After learning more about this skill, Han Yu-jin thought about how he could use it, saying, it's quite... But his train of thought was interrupted by his younger brother, who was putting food on the table and speaking to him. Yes, let's eat. Pouring rice into a bowl, the younger brother held out a portion to his thoughtful elder and said, will this much rice be enough for you? Taking the rice prepared by his brother, Han Yu-jin said happily, oh yes, it will be enough. Thank you. I'll eat it with pleasure. The younger man replied, I made it with what I had. I don't know how it turned out. Hearing these words from his younger brother about his cooking, Han Yu-jin decided to try it. And after taking the first sip, he said, it's delicious. Hearing this result of his efforts, the younger brother breathed out a sigh of relief and said, really? Thank God. Delighted that his culinary masterpiece was appreciated, even though he had not prepared it with the best ingredients, Han Yu-hyun beamed with happiness and said to his older brother, there is more. If you want more, just ask. Tasting what his younger brother had prepared, Han Yu-jin, hastily devouring everything he had cooked, said to him in amazement, I didn't know you were such a good cook. Hearing such warm words of praise from his older brother, the younger one said, I learned it when I cooked for myself. To which he received a reply, why? You have so much money. When he asked his younger brother why he studied and cooked for himself, despite the fact that he could eat wherever he wanted, he received the following answer. Now there are items for detoxification and removal of curses. But there was no such thing before. Having received the answer to his question, Han Yu-jin immediately became quiet, realizing the seriousness of the matter and the risks involved, and said, have there been people who have added poison or put a curse on food? Hearing another question from his older brother, the younger one explained to him the whole reason why he decided it would be better to cook himself, saying, the young man was speaking alone, so he was restrained. Recalling his youthful years, Han Yu-hyun said, other guilds grew by colluding with large corporations, but I didn't join any guilds, and I said that I would start my own guild. Continuing his story of how difficult it was for him to go through all this alone, he said, if I had humbly joined a suitable guild, it would have been better. But as soon as he said this, he felt two hands on his face. Grabbing his brother's face, Han Yu-jin pulled him toward him and said, you bastard! Why didn't you tell me about this before? Hearing such words of concern from his elder brother, the younger one looked down and said guiltily, take away that expression, brother. I chose this path myself. After asking him not to look at him so closely, Han Yu-hyun added later, but there was one thing that kept bothering me. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin asked, what is it? To which he received an answer. Because of my behavior, our relationship has deteriorated. Deciding to talk about his methods of dealing with his brother's popularity, Han Yu-hyun said, I followed you around and interfered with every single thing you did. I tried to make sure you didn't catch their eye. I purposely stayed away for fear that they would hurt my only brother. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin immediately rebutted him, saying to his brother, you should have just told me about it. The younger man replied, I didn't want to burden you, and then I thought you wouldn't understand. Putting his hand on top of Han Yu-jin's, who grabbed his shoulder in an attempt to calm him down and prove his point, Han Yu-hyun said, but I was wrong. Smiling at his older brother, Han Yu-hyun gently squeezed his hand and said, you still think and care about me, and you apologized and told me that you love me. As Han Yu-hyun continued to express his gratitude to his older brother, he smiled gently and said, thank you for saying that, even though I treated you so cruelly, brother. Hearing Han Yu-jin speak so movingly, he was almost in tears and said, Yu-hyun, ashamed that he and his brother had had such a beautiful and heartfelt conversation, Han Yu-jin said as he put food in his brother's bowl, What do I have to thank you for? You have suffered so much during this time. Come on, eat this, and this too. Seeing the older man's reaction, Hen replied happily, I'll eat it with pleasure. As the two of them sat together at the family table, having a nice conversation and eating dinner, Han Yujin thought, how wonderful it is that I turned back the clock. It was the best choice I ever made. As Han Yu-hyun was enjoying his self-cooked dinner, he suddenly stood up, holding his phone in his hand, and spoke thoughtfully as he chewed on his food. I have work to do. I have to go. Oh yes, brother. One more thing before I go. Taking his coat in hand, Han Yu-hyun said, I've got the broker's contact from the wake-up call. Hearing this, Jin replied to him, Huh? Yeah, okay. To which his younger brother then added, In any case, he won't answer now even if you try to contact him. After giving this order to his younger brother, Han Yu-hyun hovered over his brother, staring intently at his phone. The latter, looking for a number to delete, said, It doesn't mean you got rid of those brokers, does it? Here, I deleted it. Is that enough? Seeing that his older brother had deleted the broker's contact from his phone, he threw on his coat and said, Then I'll go. To which he received a reply, Yes, do a good job. I'll take care of the rest. Hearing this from his older brother, the younger one, heading for the exit door, spoke to him, and then, closing the lock, added, Hey, what are you talking about, brother? Where are you going to go? What? Brother, you're not going anywhere else. Standing at the door, before leaving to run errands, the younger brother spoke to the older one. Don't go anywhere. Stay here. Hearing this, the older brother was shocked, but he could not say anything out of surprise. Sitting at the table, saying goodbye to his brother, Han Yu-jin, hearing that he would not go anywhere and could not leave the apartment at all, froze in place. What? Realizing what he was getting at, Han Yu-jin immediately stood up and exclaimed in a rebellious voice, Wait a second, what does that mean? I can't leave here? Hearing this question from his brother, Han Yu-hyun spoke to him in a calm tone. It is very dangerous outside. You are not allowed to go outside. Hearing this prohibition, Han Yu-jin exclaimed in indignation. What? Han Yu-jin approached his brother and spoke to him in anxiety. Is it dangerous? I was just walking around the neighborhood this morning. His brother replied, The situation is different from this morning. If you are close to me again, you are no longer safe as before. Han Yu-hyun began to explain the whole situation that was happening now. You've been fine until now, precisely because I kept you at a distance. But now my enemies have set their sights on you. There is no telling when they might make an attempt on your life. How can I let you walk around alone? Han Yu-hyun stood in the middle of the room and spread his arms, showing everything that was there, and spoke to his older brother. From now on, brother, you will only stay here. Hearing this from his elder brother, Han Yu-jin wanted to run away, but he ran to the door and exclaimed, What? What are you talking about? I'll get out of here. Just as he was about to leave, someone's voice made him freeze in his tracks. He said, Mr. Han Yu-jin, we have brought everything you asked for here. Please sign here. When Han Yu-jin heard that the transportation service had arrived and had already brought everything he needed, he exclaimed in surprise, You brought what? Huh? Hearing his brother's surprise, Han Yu-hyun informed him, Even if you go home, there is nothing there. Your home is here now, brother. To which he replied, You madman! What are you doing here all of a sudden? Looking at his elder brother in surprise, the younger one said in a calm tone, not understanding the reason for his indignation. Why? Brother, you said everything was fine. He remembered the moment when his older brother met him after the incident with the broker, when he had attacked Han Yu-hyun, and said to the older brother, You apologized, told me you loved me, and accepted everything I've done so far. Rubbing his nose, almost in tears at the touching words he heard from his older brother, Han Yu-hyun said, It's as if I had gotten your permission. Hearing his younger brother's explanation of why he thought so, Han Yu-jin froze in place, made a sour face, and loudly exclaimed, How could that even mean something like that? Losing all desire to do anything in spite of his brother, because there was no point in doing so, Han Yu-jin laid down on the ground and remembered his brother's words. Don't even take a step, and said wearily, Yu-hyun, why is he acting like this? Side effects from going back in time? No, this is not the time for that. Deciding that this was not the time to stay, Han Yu-jin began to sort through his belongings and prepare to escape, and confidently exclaimed, We need to take the most necessary things and escape before my brother returns. Having packed all the most necessary things into his briefcase, Han Yu-jin headed for the door, and after opening it slightly, looking back, he said thoughtfully, If I make a mistake, I will spend the rest of my life locked up. But as soon as he wanted to leave and open the door wide, a strong man was waiting for him at the entrance. standing guard over the room. When he saw Han Yu-jin, he looked at him with a condemning look. Noticing that the boy was trying to escape, the guard said sternly, "What?" When Han Yu-jin saw the burly man standing outside his door, he went back into the room and closed the door, saying, "Oh, hello." Standing outside the door as a guard was the abyssal A-class hunter, Kim Sung-han, Yoo-hyun's confidant with a powerful defense skill. When he noticed the fugitive, he closed the passage to prevent him from leaving. Seeing that the exit was closed, Han Yu-jin spoke to him. "Listen, could you move back a bit?" The man replied in a rude tone, "No way." Closing the door back to keep the fugitive from leaving the room, Kim Seong-han said to the boy, "The chairman ordered me to make sure you don't leave." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin, who wanted to escape, thought, "He even sent an A-class guard." Trying to get around Kim Sung-han, Han Yu-jin spoke to him, "I won't be long." To which he received a clear answer, "I said you can't." Jin pointed out, "Oh, what do you care where I'm going?" With one hand on his head, covering his face and rubbing it, and the other on his shoulder, Kim Seong-han spoke to him. "I will not speak for a long time." Obediently returned to the room. After saying the first option in a calm tone, Kim Seong-han, with a menacing expression, emphasized the second option in a rough tone. "Otherwise, I will force you in there." Hearing these disappointing suggestions, Han Yu-jin, who had been caught by the guard who was watching his room, was drenched in cold sweat from fright and sighed heavily. In this situation, Han Yu-jin imagined a picture in his mind. "Damn. It seems as if he is oppressing my whole body. It's a special feeling of fear that high-level hunters give off. I feel like a herbivore facing a predator." In such a dangerous situation, Han Yu-jin kept looking at his opponent nervously and repeatedly saying, "You can't be afraid. You can't be afraid." As Han Yu-jin repeated the same words over and over, he heard a system alert that informed him, "Fear resistance activated. Oppression is cancelled." Hearing this system notification that went off when the skill was activated, Han Yu-jin thought happily, "Thanks to this skill, the trembling has disappeared." Looking at his enemy from a different angle now, Han Yu-jin, no longer trembling all over his body from the power of his opponent, thought, "Now for me." Realizing that now Kim Seong-han was not as scary as he had seemed recently, but just a big bear, he thought, "Kim Seong-han doesn't look like a predator. He looks like a gentle puppy." Overcoming his fear, Han Yu-jin decided to counterattack, trying to intimidate his opponent. He made a scary face and spoke to the A-ranked hunter. "Disk, let go." "What are you trying to do?" Pointing his finger at him, the boy said, "Hey, Mr. Kim Sung-han, don't you know the laws of the Republic of Korea? Everyone has the right to freedom. Do you know that it is a crime to lock me up like this?" Realizing that Han Yu-jin would not simply return to the room on his own, Kim Sung-han took him by the skin of his teeth and carried him back by force. At that time, the boy could only keep exclaiming, "Huh, are you going to jail? Uncle Policeman." Bringing the boy into the living room, Kim Sung-han spoke to him, holding him in his hand. "This is a punishment. Do you want me to take you to your room like this?" Hearing this, the boy said sadly, "No, I'm sorry." And in his mind, he was saddened. No matter how hard you push, the frog will not become an ox. As soon as Kim Sun-han was about to throw him inside, he said, "Now come in." Being at a loss, the boy exclaimed, wait a minute. Is there no other way? I have so many skills." Panicking that his escape plan was going awry, Han Yu-jin heard another skill, Promising Sprout, being activated. Hearing this, he said in surprise, "Is this something useful?" As soon as this skill was activated, Han Yu-jin grabbed hold of Kim Sung-han's head and looked at him in astonishment. "Wow, what is this?" After using the Promising Sprout skill, Han Yu-jin saw that Kim Sung-han still had all of his untapped abilities and could reach the S rank. What? An AS Awakening grade? He could become an S grade? Looking further at his bodyguard, Han Yu-jin was surprised to see him on the same level as his brother. Then, there could be 2 S-class hunters in the abyss. Pulling at his ears and hair, Han Yu-jin said in frustration, "What a pity! Is there no way I can change this with my skill?" Not knowing what he was doing, Kim Sung-han spoke to him. "What are you— Hey!" As Han Yu-jin tried to remedy the situation, he heard a system notification that read, "Object's education is incomplete. After using the code word, you can use My Baby is the Best and obtain the S-class skills that have failed." Hearing this, the boy said, "Cool, so I can change it." Realizing that he could raise his bodyguard's class and thus pay off his imprisonment, Han Yu-jin said, "All right, the solution is to educate him. If I educate him, he will obey me, right? I'll dig up the S-class and I'll get my freedom back." Grabbing the burly man's hands, Han Yu-jin was already serious about his plan, but suddenly spoke in confusion. For this, damn, a code word. I have to tell this person. Looking at his bodyguard, who was clearly in a bad mood, Han Yu-jin thought anxiously, What, love? Angered by the boy's behavior, Kim Sung-tan said angrily, "What are you doing, Mr. Han Yu-jin?" Realizing that his situation was bad, Han Yu-jin gathered all his will and courage into a fist and said to Kim Seong-tan, "Look at this, Mr. Song-han." As he said this, the boy folded two fingers in his hand, thumb and forefinger, to create a heart gesture and showed it to his stern uncle. Noticing that this did not work, Han Yu-jin went to more radical measures and put both hands together and made a heart gesture again. Seeing this strange behavior, the guard could barely contain his anger. Throwing Han Yu-jin back into the room, he returned to his post, standing quietly in place without any further trouble. Meanwhile, the boy, once inside again, fell to his knees in frustration and began to beat the floor. Throwing the boy into the room, he was followed by a shout, "Stop these unpleasant gestures and go back to your room." The boy begged sadly, "Change the code word, please." And just then his brother returned. He entered the room and said, "Brother, I'm here." But all he could see was a sad picture of Jin lying on the floor. "Did you have a good rest?" He replied, "You don't see, I'm dying." Han Yu-hyun went to his elder brother and took him in his arms and said, "You haven't unpacked your things. Would you rather live with me than here? I will give you the room that is left, so let's move there." My brother replied, "Do what you want, I'm locked up anyway." Hearing that he was sighing heavily because of the lack of freedom, Han Yu-hyun said to his older brother, "Cheer up, I will let you out after a while." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin immediately focused his dead gaze on his brother and said, "What? I can go out? When?" To which he replied, "Calm down and listen." After saying this, Han Yu-heng said, "Right now, the abyss has many enemies holding it back. But if we become stronger than all of them, then even they will not be able to touch us lightly, and then you will be able to go out safely." Looking at his brother with the look of a dead fish, Han Yu-hyun spoke to him, "So, just wait until the moment when the abyss becomes the strongest in the world." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin thought in disappointment. Several years have passed in the future. Taking his brother's hand, who was beginning to lose heart because of his disappointment, the younger man said, "Just be patient for a year. In a year, I will sweep away everything in my path. Of course, sometimes I'll let you go out." At the time, Han Yu-jin was thinking, it took more than 3 years. After saying that he would sometimes let Han Yu-jin out for a walk, the younger man added, "But only with Song-han or me as a guard." Hearing this, the senior thought, "This is like walking a dog." Han Yu-hyun immediately thought about how he could improve his brother's life, and said thoughtfully, "It will be difficult to do this often. It takes me a few days to clear the dungeons, but I can't entrust you to someone below B class either." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin thought about what his brother had said, and the speech in his head. "Wait a second! Isn't there some way to do this with my abilities?" Recalling his past, he thought, "A long time ago, I used to spend all day looking for information related to hunters. I clearly remember who will become a high-level hunter in the future." When Han Yu-jin thought of this possibility, he got excited about the idea. If I can find them in advance and make them happy, I can awaken them. And in return for their awakening, I will make them my bodyguards. Imagining how famous he would become among the S-class hunters, Han Yu-jin thought, if I become more authoritative like this, Yu-hyun won't be able to do whatever he wants either. With my skills and rank, it's not impossible. As he continued to think about what he could do to protect his elder brother when Han Yu-hyun himself was busy clearing the dungeon, he said thoughtfully. Then, interrupting his thoughts, Han Yu-jin ran over to his younger brother and spoke happily, expressing his own idea in a way that didn't sound strange. "I'm going to find A-class hunters." Looking at his older brother, who had proposed such a strange idea, and who had volunteered to carry it out himself, even though he was in danger at every turn, Han Yu-hyun said in surprise, "Brother?" In an attempt to convince him that his proposal was a very good one, Han Yu-jin spoke promisingly to his brother after his brother's surprised phrase, "Yes." And in his mind he thought, "Okay, I'll find the future AS classes." Having thought out his plan well, Han Yu-jin thought that it would be most effective to convince the children, and then he thought, if it's going to be like this, it's going to be little kids who are easy to convince. He realized how many opportunities he had to find future high-ranking hunters. He imagined how sweet his life would be in the future, and he said in his head, "I'll make them nice, and I'll raise them to be my personal bodyguards." Hearing this strange proposal from his brother, Han Yu-hyun asked him in surprise, "Can you find an A-class?" He answered on his knees, "Yes, let me move freely if I can find an A-class personal bodyguard." Hearing these words from his older brother, the younger one asked him in surprise, "And how will you find him?" And he mumbled in confusion, Well, I have different ways." Han Yu-hei looked at his elder brother with a stern gaze and spoke to him, looking at him closely. "Brother, are you awake?" The elder brother only exclaimed, "Eh?" After saying this, the younger brother grabbed the older one and began to question him. Do you have a skill that attains high class, or does it awaken? When did you awaken? During the meeting with the broker, it hadn't happened yet. After meeting me, what kind of skill? What if even more people are going to target you now? To which the frightened Han Yu-jin replied, Eek! Take your paws off me, damn it. Realizing that his older brother wouldn't tell him anything just like that, Han Yu-hyun decided to take drastic measures. After tying him up and taking him down to the basement with a gag, Han Yu-hae said to him, You're safe now. Han Yu-jin could only think, No way can I tell the truth. If I tell you about the L-class skill, I'll be imprisoned forever. To prevent this from happening, Han Yu-jin said to his brother, FS class! Just an ordinary F class. He said this, trying not to give himself away, but he was going through the motions in his head. I can determine the strong and weak probable class of awakening, but I cannot do more than one awakening per month. Hearing his elder brother say this, Han Yu-hang took a pensive stance and spoke to him. With your skills, you're not likely to be a target. After saying this, Han Yu-hyun spoke to his brother. There will be an alternative soon. Hearing this, the older brother asked the younger brother, An alternative? He replied, An awakening center will be built. Hearing these words from his brother, Han Yu-jin was thoughtful and said, The mechanism of awakening has been revealed. But in his mind, he pondered, But the center has not yet appeared. Continuing to think about what might happen in the future, he said, When it appears, anyone will be able to awaken safely. Then there will be fewer fraudsters promising awakening, and there will be no more people who need your skill. After thinking about what would happen in the awakening centers, Han Yu-jin laughed a little to himself and said, Then it's all very well. After finishing his thoughts, Han Yu-jin exclaimed, It's a useless skill, so there's nothing to worry about. I'll find an A class. Just give me a chance, Em. Hearing the suggestion from his older brother, Han Yu-hae spoke to his older brother as he dragged the boxes. All right, it's not easy, but if you find it, let's take care of another matter now. Are we moving your things to my house or not? Even though he said this, Han Yu-jin didn't listen to him, but jumped up and down happily, excited to be set free, exclaiming, Good, hurrah! Having won his ticket to freedom, Han Yu-jin spoke joyfully in his head, watching his brother. You think you can keep me locked up at will? Look, I will sweep away everyone from A to S class. Already dreaming of what the future held for him, Han Yu-jin imagined himself being carried in the arms of the super-strong hunters he would gather and becoming their respected leader, thinking, I'll find them quickly and increase my power. I can even start a guild that will be more serious than the Abyss, don't you think? He. As soon as Han Yu-jin was able to leave the house and go to the city, the next day, he and the guards he had been assigned went to the South Korean Hunters Association, to the place of registration of those who had awakened. Once inside, everyone immediately turned their attention to them when they saw the famous warrior, and people started to cheer, saying, Isn't that Kim Seong-han? The Abyssal Shield, Hunter Kim Seong-han. Kim Seong-han walked in front of him, and behind him was Han Yu-jin, who was upset and tired, and not at all happy to be recognized by his bodyguard. Seeing that Kim Seong-han was not alone, someone in the crowd said, Who is that with him? A new hunter? Judging by the fact that he was assigned an A-class car as his bodyguard, he is not a simple man. Is there a new S-class rookie coming today? After registering at the South Korean Hunters Association's registration office, Han Jin was registered as an F-class hunter. And then it read, Mr. Han Yu-jin is registered as an F-class hunter. Turning back, Han Yu-jin walked to the entrance, furiously listening to everything the disappointed crowd said. What? So he's not an S-class? Then why did you pretend to be one? Nothing special, just disappointment. Listening to this, Han Yu-jin was furiously talking in his head. I never pretended. After completing the registration, he could begin the other part of his task, which was to go shopping. Remembering the money his brother had left him, he said, The most important thing is that I've completed my registration. Now I need to buy some equipment. Yu-hyun gave me some money. How much is there? Opening the envelope, he saw a number with 9 zeros, and exclaimed in shock. Han Yu-hyun, you're crazy. The next day, he and his bodyguard went to the store to buy some equipment. Entering the rather large store, they were greeted at the entrance by 4 managers who said, Welcome, what equipment would you like to start with? As the managers began to select the new warrior's equipment, they presented Han Yu-jin with many jewelry items and said, This is equipment that enhances abilities. We have prepared things that can be worn in everyday life. When Han Yu-jung saw what they brought him and put on, he said to them, Do you have anything more modest? Hearing their client's request, the managers took away all the jewelry and handed Han Yu-jung the dark elf earrings, saying, As a simple accessory, we can offer you these. After trying them on, Han Yu-jin said, Well, earrings. Next, he was presented with the following accessories. Manicore leather gloves, endurance +6, strength +20. Light fabric belt, Dexterity plus 16. After putting on all of these accessories, Han Yujin went to his stats and saw them and said, "Good, I'll have a C-class ability." After buying the accessories in the store, Han Yujin decided that he would spend the rest of the money on his enhancement, and he said, "With the rest of the money, I'll buy some potions," and as Han Yujin left the accessory store, he saw a stern guard standing in front of him, who spoke to him. "Where did you go?" Getting into the car with his guard, Han Yujin said sadly, "Shopping, or is that not allowed too?" The bodyguard told him, "Let me know when you're going out." After fastening his seatbelt and starting the car, Kim Sung-tan said to Han Yujin, "If there's nothing else to do, let's go back." The boy objected, "No, take me to another place." After telling his bodyguard where to go, Han Yujin looked out the window and thought, "The Ice Witch Park Aram definitely lives somewhere in this neighborhood. She lost her parents and lived with her relatives who own a meat restaurant." Recalling this girl, the boy said, "She was an unrivaled hunter even among the A classes, so this level should satisfy Yu Hang. She'll awaken in 3 years when she turns 18, so she should be in middle school now, right?" Arriving at the right neighborhood where the Ice Huntress Park Aram lived, Han Yujin spoke to himself, "I need to find her quickly and sign a contract and get my freedom back." As Han Yujin passed by a meat restaurant in the neighborhood, he asked the woman cleaning his doorstep if she knew a girl named Park Aram, and she replied, "Park Aram? I don't know." Passing another meat restaurant in the neighborhood, Han Yujin asked a man at the entrance to his restaurant if he might know a girl named Park Aram, but the man also replied, "We don't have any in our restaurant." As Han Yujin continued to wander around the neighborhood with restaurants serving meat, he held a kebab in his hand and said, "There are more meat restaurants than I expected. Will I have to go around them all?" As Han Yujin walked along the road and thought about it, he was a little dissatisfied at first, but then his mood changed dramatically. "When is this? Ah, the smell of roasting meat. Mr. Kim Sung-tan, aren't you hungry? Let's eat first." He replied, "No, I'm fine." To which he received the reply, "Oh, what kind of person are you?" After refusing the offer of his commander's brother, Kim Sung-tan asked him, "I am more interested in why we came here. If you need a meat restaurant, there is one near the abyss." Han Yujin replied, "I feel such a strong energy." Hearing such a blatant lie from his master, whom he had to protect, Kim Sung-tan said in frustration, "That's a lie." To which Han Yujin exclaimed, "I can hear everything." As Han Yujin walked down the road, he thought, "Shall we have dinner first and then continue our search? I'm hungry for some kopchi." Suddenly he heard, "Oh, of course, it's all my fault." Standing in the middle of the street, the girl was shouting very loudly to her friend, picking a fight with him in the street and exclaiming, "How many times do I have to tell you? It's that bastard Mak Soo-jong." Han Yujin turned his head in the direction of the noise and said, "Is it really?" The man who had been scolding the girl shouted, "Think about where you screamed. Come here." She replied, "I hate it, God. It's easier to die." Seeing that the girl ran away from the man and past a guy who was able to examine her more closely, he said, "I found her." As Han Yujin watched the girl run away quickly, he shouted after her, trying to stop her. Oh, wait. Deciding that he could not just stand there, but had to act, he handed his food to the guard and said, "Mr. Kim Seong-han, hold this for me." The guard was surprised. "Ah, what?" Han Yujin ran after her, but he couldn't catch up to her, so he said, "Why is she so fast? She hasn't even woken up yet." Deciding that now was the time to use his equipment, Han Yujin suddenly sped up and thought, "Now with my equipment, this speed is nothing to me." As Han Yujin ran past ordinary passers-by, he made a wind and a noise, and people shouted after him, "Wah! What? So fast! Wow, wind!" And he just thought, equipment is the best thing in the world. Running out into the square and looking around for the fugitive, he said, "She's gone somewhere over here, where..." There. Catching up with the fugitive, Han Yujin shouted after her to stop her. "Park Aram! You're Park Aram's student, aren't you?" The girl, hearing the shouts behind her, looked back and stopped, and saw a boy running after her. When he caught up with her, he said, "Let's have a little talk." She replied, "What? Did my uncle send you?" Thinking that this was a man sent by her guardian, the girl looked back and ran out into the road and exclaimed, "Go away, uncle. I'm not coming back." To which he replied, "What kind of uncle am I to you? I am still in the prime of my life." When Han Yujin saw that the girl was running right under the wheels of a car that was moving along the road, he called out to her, "Look out! The car!" Hearing the boy's shouts, the girl looked to her side and noticed that a car was coming at her. Frozen in place with shock, she could not even move. Noticing that she was in danger, Han Yujin rushed to her aid and ran out into the road and grabbed her, shielding her from the impact. After saving the girl from serious injury, Han Yujin and Park Aram flew away from the impact, while the driver of the car just watched in fright at what he had done. After this incident, when the guy saved her from the car, Han Yujin spoke to her. "Are you okay?" Are you hurt? After saying this to the frightened girl, Han Yujin raised his head and added, Of course, I wish the ending was more exciting. Sitting on her rescuer, Park Aram said to the boy in surprise, What is this? Uncle, are you a hunter? He replied, Don't you want to get off me first? After this road trip, they went to a restaurant to eat and discuss the contract. Sitting at the table, Han Yujin said, Wow, just look at the color. The structure is just incredible. Looking at the delicious meat grilling in front of him, Han Yujin drooled and said happily, How long has it been since I ate marbled veal? Sitting at the table and savoring the meat, Han Yujin said to the girl, Eat well, Aram. Order plenty. And he thought, She eats well. What a relief that I'm paying with the corporate card. Seeing how greedily she was eating the meat, Han Yujin asked her, But, are you sure you can eat here? You said that your uncle owns a meat restaurant, right? She replied, It's not good. Uncle, you shouldn't go there either. It's a waste of money. To which Jin replied, I told you I'm not an uncle. As they continued to enjoy the delicious food at the restaurant, the girl said to Han Yujin, Tell me something better. You say that you are the elder brother of Abyssal Head. After saying this, the girl suddenly asked the boy, Why would such a person want me? Han Yujin smiled and said, Because you have wonderful energy? Hearing this ridiculous answer, the girl got up from the table and said, I don't believe it. Thank you for the food. He replied, Hey, nothing like that. Han Yujin began to imagine something to convince the girl and said, To tell you the truth, I knew your parents. When my parents died, they helped me. He thought, even though it's a lie. After saying this, Han Yujin continued, So, although I am late, I have come to repay the debt. I've had too many things to do until now. I don't know what to do with my eyes from shame. The girl said with a heavy sigh, It doesn't matter. I have people who will wipe their saliva and give me a slap on the wrist. Taking a piece of meat out of the bowl, Han Yujin said, I was wondering if there was anything I could do to help you. My strength just happens to be outstanding. Hearing this, the girl asked in surprise, Power? Hearing the interest in the girl's voice, Han Yujin said, The power of awakening. My ability is to awaken other people. Han Yujin continued to recruit the girl with all possible methods and words. Park Aram, you can awaken at least B grade. Placing the Abyssal Guild's business card on the table, Han Yujin added, In addition, I'm under the protection of the Abyss. Therefore, I can help you get a good job as a huntress. Clasping his hands in front of him and making sure that the girl was already hooked, Han Yujin spoke to her. If you don't mind, I'd like to be your sponsor. Holding out his hand to the girl and offering her his terms, Han Yujin said to her, What do you say? Will you become a huntress by making a deal with me? Hearing this offer from a boy she had never met before, Park Aram said in surprise, A huntress? Yeah? Realizing that everything was going according to his cunning plan, Han Yujin thought, Gotcha. This profession is considered the coolest among teenagers. We need to put on a show that will entice her. Deciding to perform an interesting trick, Han Yujin held out his other hand and suddenly a contract appeared in front of him, and he held a pen to sign it. Then Jin said, Yes. Will you read the contract first? Park stood up from the table and said, Wow, what is this? Where did you pull this out of? Do you have some kind of inventory? To which he replied, You'll have one when you wake up. This contract is also a special item created from additional items from the dungeon. Handing the contract to the girl to read, the guy added, All you have to do is officially sign the contract as Huntress Park Aram. Reading the contract, the girl saw the following clauses. Terms. To enter into an agreement with the Abyssal Guild. To keep Han Yujin's skill secret. Be responsible for Han Yujin's security for a year. Hearing the girl highlight these points, Han Yujin emphasized, Yes, I need a bodyguard. I'm a weak F class, but someone is always trying to lock me up. The girl replied, Won't you be ashamed to be protected by a middle school student? Hearing this objection from the girl, Han Yujin replied, Why should I be? You will be much stronger than me after you awaken. The girl said, Listen, will I be able to become independent after I awaken? After asking this question, Park Aram hung her head and waited for an answer. Hearing this, Han Jin said in surprise, Huh? Independent? Without hesitation, Han Yujin answered, Actually, it is possible. Awakened minors are on the same level as adults. Hearing this, the girl replied sharply, Then I will make a deal. Taking the pen in her hand, she was about to sign, but Jin stopped her, saying, Oh, hey, wait. Hearing this, the girl asked in surprise, Why? You just have to write the name. He replied, No, we need to check everything in detail. The agreement does not contain your conditions. Taking the pen from the girl's hand, Han Yujin spoke to her, pointing to the agreement. Lord, give it to me. What if you had been deceived when you signed it rashly? After pointing out some of the mandatory items to the girl, Han Yujin said, Here, take a look. The fulfillment of the agreement must be carefully monitored. You're not used to this kind of thing at your age, so you still need a guardian. After saying this, Han Yu-jin emphasized, even if independence looks tempting. To which I heard, what if my guardian is deceiving me? Then he replied by looking at the girl. Huh? What do you mean? Hearing that Han Yu-jin did not understand her, Park Aram repeated herself. What's the point of a guardian who cheats me? What's the point of monitoring the contract? They'll just take everything away from me. After listening to the girl's cry of the soul once again, Han Yu-jin asked her again, Aram, what are you talking about? As soon as he said that, he heard the door to the restaurant open and a voice come out. Park Aram, where did this one go? Rushing into the restaurant, the girl's furious uncle exclaimed, I was told you were in this restaurant. When the girl saw her guardian, she exclaimed in fright, You uncle! Seeing the girl's uncle, Han Yu-jin immediately stood up and said, hello, I'm her. But he didn't even listen to the boy and continued, You won't do what you're told, but you're just lounging around? Approaching the girl and grabbing her hand, the evil man said to her, Follow me immediately. I'm going to change your habits. When Jin saw this, he was alarmed and said, Wait, calm down, Uncle Aram. Hearing Han Yu-jin's voice, the angry uncle spoke in an angry tone to the boy. What are you? You're fooling around with this one? How close are you to her? To which Jin replied anxiously, Nothing like that. Are you out of your mind? Han Yu-jin was furious with the girl's uncle and could not stand such insolence and grabbed his uncle's arm. Jin squeezed his uncle's hand tightly and heard him say, Let go. What kind of strength does such a little brat have? And Jin just thought, long live the equipment. Hearing her uncle shouting, the girl was frightened and said to the boy, Won't you let him go? Hearing these words from the girl, Han Yu-jin let go of his uncle and looked at her. At the same time, his uncle was rubbing his arm and said to Jin, Who do you think you are, interfering? Looking at the frightened girl, who did not even want to look at her uncle and was looking away from him, Han Yu-jin realized what he should do. Thinking back to the moment when he first noticed the girl arguing with her uncle on the street, Han Yu-jin said to her, I understand you, Aram. Grabbing her uncle's arm again, who was insulting her, Han Yu-jin looked at him with an angry glare and said, Are you saying that it is better to have no guardian than to have one like this? Hearing these words from the boy, the girl shouted out to him in confusion, confirming his words. Yes, that's right! He is the worst! Pointing her finger at her uncle, who was constantly insulting and oppressing her, she said to Han Yu-jin, He has pocketed all of my parents' inheritance and won't give me a penny for pocket money. Hearing a noise behind them, the whole room looked back to where the shouting was coming from. During the typhoon, he only gave me a cheap plastic umbrella. Even when it broke, my uncle didn't buy me a new one, and I had to use a plastic bag to cover myself. Hearing this, the audience said, What? Isn't that violence? Hearing such loud statements from his niece, the angry uncle, hovering over the girl, said in a rude tone, You are always shaming people. The uncle was very angry at his niece's words, and he pushed Han Yu-jin away and walked toward the girl, saying, Get out! I'm going to kick that little face right now. But his plans were immediately thwarted, and all because he pushed Han Yu-jin away, and he fell to the floor. After the fall, something happened that no one could have expected, but it attracted the attention of everyone. After the fall, when the incredible show began, Park Aram, who was frightened by what was happening, said, You uncle? He in turn was also very shocked by what had happened, and only said, Huh? Watching Han Yu-jin fall after being pushed, he stopped moving and just sat in one place, not moving, and not even showing signs of life. Noticing this, Park Aram spoke to the boy, Are you okay, uncle? But the next moment, Han Yu-jin suddenly came to life and started rolling on the floor, screaming, This uncle is hitting people. Hearing this, the disturbed uncle said, I didn't do anything. Before he could finish, Han Yu-jin stood up and said, holding back his tears, We can have a normal conversation. Why are you pushing people? I just stopped that girl. Continuing his performance, Han Yu-jin said in an offended voice, You were going to hit her too, weren't you? A weak middle school student? Realizing that something was wrong, the furious uncle gathered his wits and attacked Jin, grabbing him by the collar and shouting, You bastard! You're turning the tables! Seeing that his uncle was not in a very stable position, Han Yu-jin immediately tripped him and knocked the angry man to the ground. Falling down, the uncle landed on a table filled with various foods, and when he fell, he simply spoiled them. Han Yu-jin immediately got up, pretending to be an innocent sheep, and said, God, be careful, the soda spilled, so the floor is slippery. Hearing this excuse, the uncle exclaimed, You! Hearing his uncle's threatening tone, Han Yu-jin ran to him and tried to calm him down again, pushing his face into the table. Without giving him a chance to get up, Han Yu-jin said, My God, you slipped again. Are you sure you're okay? The girl watching could hardly contain her laughter. Leaning over to his uncle, Han Yu-jin spoke to him as he tilted his head against the hot frying pan. Aren't you ashamed of stealing from a little child? Do I have to kill you? Hearing this, and seeing that he was about to touch the frying pan, the uncle said, Let go. And Han Yu-jin added, If you do that to that girl again. But suddenly he was overwhelmed. Looking to the side, he said in surprise, What? It was Park Aaron, who was speaking in awe. Wow, what a bam on the table. It sounds like a wrestling match. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin said, "That sound didn't come from me." Looking behind him to find the source of the sound, and having lost interest in his uncle with whom he was training, Han Yu-jin said, "I think I hear it from the street." What? Looking out the window, Han Yu-jin and the girl saw that there was a panic and screaming coming from the street. "Chia, what is it? Is it an earthquake? Has the war started? Is it real?" Seeing such panic in the yard, Kim Seong-tan, the bodyguard, started looking for his master, and when he found him in a restaurant, he called out, "Mr. Han Yu-jin." At that time, there was an incredible panic on the street. Everyone was running in front of each other, trying to save their lives. While running away, people heard someone shouting, "Look out! Evacuate! The monster!" As soon as it was heard among the crowd, it was immediately followed by a loud roar of a monster. It was a monster that had come out of the dungeon that had exploded. As they fled the scene, saving their lives and their families, ordinary people could be heard shouting as they ran away. There was an explosion near this area. Fleeing the scene of the explosion, people were looking back at the monster and exclaiming, "Eek! Run away! It's coming this way!" Watching from a distance, Han Yu-jin exclaimed in fright, "A dungeon breakthrough?" And Kim Sung-tan, seeing the monster nearby, shouted, "Move away! It's not safe here!" Deciding that it was his duty to protect ordinary people and that he, as a hunter, should deal with this monster, the guard used his strength and shouted, "I will stop it." Using his strength, Kim Sung-tan ran forward, used his A-class skill, Shield of Space, and struck the section of road in front of him. As soon as he did so, a huge wall of concrete and asphalt immediately rose up in front of him, blocking the monster's passage and separating it from the people. After buying some time for the people to escape the scene, Kim Seong-tan called out to his master, "Take this chance and evacuate quickly." Watching the situation, the frightened Han Yu-jin thought anxiously, "There is no victor in my memories. Why the monster all of a sudden?" Standing in front of the huge wall that separated them from the monster, Han Yu-jin looked at it in anxiety and thought, was it at this time in the past that the dungeon broke through here? Preparing to take appropriate action, Kim Seong-tan shouted out to his master, "Ta Park, hurry up and get out of here!" As soon as he said this, he immediately ran toward the monster. As he approached the monster, Kim Seong-tan, standing on top of the wall he had built, decided to try to strike first and jump toward the monster. Approaching the monster from the mountain, which had climbed out of the dungeon whose entrance had opened, Kim Seong-tan kicked it hard. As soon as the kick stopped, the hunter realized that his attack had not harmed the enemy at all, and he said in surprise, "No base?" Realizing that his attack was pointless, Kim Seong-tan decided to retreat and come up with another plan of action to defeat the enemy. As he retreated from the monster, the hunter jumped out of the ravine he had created to contain the monster. When the crowd saw the monster leaving the trap, they shouted again, "Ah! He's climbing over the wall! Let's run!" The girl and her uncle were running away from the scene of the incident, and looking back, her uncle shouted in fright, "Eek! What's going on here?" While running to a safe place to hide from the monster's attack, Park Aaron caught herself on a sticking-out rock and fell to the ground. Having lost the opportunity to run with everyone else to the stronghold, she looked back and saw that debris was flying at her. Preparing for her death, she saw that the monster was already with the debris and had also launched its tentacles to grab her, and suddenly heard the sound of a thud. Gritting her teeth and preparing to die, she felt someone touch her. Opening her eyes, she saw Han Yu-jin standing in front of her, using a table to shield her from the monster's attack. Surprised by the suddenness of this, she said in astonishment, "Uncle?" Hearing these words and realizing that she was conscious, Han Yu-jin spoke to her. "Run away!" Grabbing her hand and heading in the opposite direction from the monster, Han Yu-jin shouted to the girl, "Hurry to the shelter!" Surprised that Han Yu-jin had saved her, she simply ran after him to where he was pulling her, not even trying to do anything. When she felt the warmth of his hands, she put her head down, feeling ashamed of her behavior and of all the things she had thought about him before. When Han Yu-jin reached the hiding place, he exclaimed, "The hiding place is there? In an underground shopping center?" She replied, "Yes, that's right." Hearing this, the boy added, "Quick, go down there." Hearing this, the girl said, "What? What about you?" Hearing the girl he had just rescued sound so alarmed, Han Yu-jin spoke in a heroic tone to her, planning to confront the monster. "I need to go back." Recalling what kind of monster it was, he thought, "This kind. I have seen this monster before. They are weak alone, so they move in herds. If you don't get rid of them quickly, they become a real headache." Watching his bodyguard fight and remembering his skills, Han Yu-jin thought, since Kim Sung-han specializes in defense, he doesn't have a separate skill for attacking the area. Seeing how hard the hunter was holding back the enemy, Han Yu-jin continued his thoughts. With an opponent like that, he has the least suitable specialization. Sitting not far from the battlefield, Han Yu-jin tried to think of a way to defeat this monster and said, "We must find a way, by all means." But suddenly he felt a touch behind him. Someone grabbed his hand and said, "Uncle, I'm going too! Wake me up! I can also go to fight!" Hearing this proposal from the girl, Han Yujin immediately exclaimed, "What? No way! You haven't even signed the contract yet." Hearing this, the girl replied, "Are you afraid that I'll pretend I'm not involved once you wake me up? I won't go back on my word, so hurry up. The situation is critical." Hearing the girl's arguments, Han Yujin spoke to her. "That's why you can't do it. You're just a child." Putting his hands on her shoulders, Han Yujin explained to her, "Do you think that as soon as you wake up, you will be able to fight skillfully? I want to wake you up calmly and painlessly. I'm not going to throw you into a real fight right away." Recalling the past that his younger brother had experienced on the day he woke up, Han Yujin said to the girl, "I can't stand to see the child forced to fight alone." After saying this, he spoke to her in a commanding tone. "Now the adults will take care of everything. So get to the shelter safe and sound, understand?" After ordering the girl to go to the vault, Han Yujin went to his bodyguard to help him fight the monster. On the way, he spoke to himself. "Think, Han Yujin, think." All along the way, he reproached himself for being useless and thinking, "You have been a hunter for more than 5 years. Even in your current state, you can still come up with a solution." As he approached his friend, who was confronting the enemy, the boy suddenly shouted out to him, "Hunter Kim Seong-han!" The latter heard him and looked around in surprise. Seeing his master, the hunter spoke to him. "Why did you come here? I told you it was dangerous here." The boy replied, "Use the skill of defense." Hearing this strange order, Kim Sun-han said to him, "What? That makes no sense. Even a protective barrier cannot completely enclose the center." The boy replied, "This skill is enough. I have a plan." When the hunter saw his master, he said to him, "Why have you come? I told you it was dangerous here." The boy replied, "Use the skill of defense." Hearing this strange order, Kim Sun-han said to him, "What? That makes no sense. Even a protective barrier cannot completely enclose the center." The boy replied, "This skill is enough. I have a plan." Obeying his master's order, Kim Seong-han surrounded the monster with barriers on all sides to realize the boy's plan. Seeing that the fence was ready, Kim Seong-han prepared for the next stage of the plan to destroy the monster, and standing on the wall, he prepared to strike. The next moment, using his defensive skill, the hunter pounced on the enemy to trap him in the room and prevent him from escaping. The next moment, the hunter's attack closed the structure in the form of a bowl to prevent the monster from escaping. As soon as the attack was over, large walls began to rise around the monster, slowly converging from above, closing all the ways of retreat. And so, after a short period of time, the cage closed, trapping the large monster inside, which had escaped from the dungeon. Stepping back against the wall and observing what was happening, Kim Seong-han thought, "It's not expected to use the skill like this." As soon as the trap closed, a small gap formed at the very top, just enough to get inside. Seeing that the preparations were complete, Han Yujin said, "I'm coming." Deftly moving through the village, which had ledges just right for comfortable movement, the boy quickly reached the top to use his secret weapon. As Han Yujin approached the top, he thought, "Yes, the protective barrier is something like a strong wall. If we put it around the monster, it will become a huge cage by itself." As Han Yujin approached the gap through which he wanted to enter the monster, he remembered, "The item I bought from the Hunters Association." Recalling how he had chosen it and what its qualities were, he thought, a lethal poison, boundless black poison pill. Taking it out of his pocket, he spoke happily, holding it in his hand for this particular occasion. "Good thing I bought this just in case." Han Yujin swung it hard and aimed at the hole in the rock and said, "If I blow it up inside the protective barrier and close it." As he prepared to throw the poison capsule inside the barrier, Han Yujin said, "I can kill him instantly, right?" As he said this, his sentence was suddenly interrupted by the surprise of what he saw. As he got close enough to look inside, he noticed that there was nothing inside and exclaimed, "Is it empty?" Unable to understand how this happened, Han Yujin went down to the spot where the monster had been and said in amazement, "What the hell? Where could it have gone?" No sooner had he said this than strange movements began behind him. Tentacles reached out from the gutter and grabbed his leg. The next moment, the monster itself came out of the gutter, which had been hiding there to escape the trap, moving through the pipes underground. While in the air, because he was grabbed by the monster, Han Yujin loudly exclaimed, "Uh-oh, he got out through the sewer." Regretting that he had gone down to the place where the monster was without thinking about what might happen, he said, "There are no such things in dungeons, so I didn't think about it. Is this my end?" While he was saying goodbye to his life, a girl who had come to rescue Jin was already downstairs near the monster and exclaimed, "Uncle!" Seeing Park Aram below him, Han Bijin called out to her in surprise. "Aram?" Realizing that Jin was in danger, she began to wave the umbrella she had picked up on the way to free him. After swinging it several times and hitting the monster, it dropped the boy from its tentacles, and then she shouted, "Run! There's an alley in that direction!" As Han Yujin ran away with the girl, he called out to her, "I ordered you to evacuate. What are you doing, civilian?" She replied, "What do you think you're doing? Being an F-class, running away from the monster's tentacles." Han Yujin said to the girl, But I'm still an adult, and I'm awakened, the girl replied. Don't be ridiculous. This is coming from a man who asked a middle school student for protection. Hearing this, Han Yujin replied to the girl, Ugh, I told you so. You're still young. Hearing this, Park Aaron spoke to him. I know. That's why I need more strength. Thinking back to the first time Han Yujin saved her, she thought, when my uncle saved me the other day, I calmed down. I thought he really wanted to protect me. As she ran on, the girl was deep in thought. And that made me angry that I don't have the strength to protect myself. That's why I rely on someone else's protection. Leaving the area of the fight with the monster, she continued her thoughts. That's why I want to become stronger. In situations like this, I only want it more. Thinking back to her youth and the times when she was at school, the girl reflected, I have no ability to do anything because I'm small. She continued to think about why she wanted to get her power and awaken, and continued her reflections. No more waiting with a trembling heart for someone else's protection. I want a power that I choose myself, and with which I can protect myself without anyone else's help. Deciding that they needed the power here and now to achieve their goal, she turned to Han Yujin and said, Uncle, you said so yourself. Looking at the girl, who was full of confidence and courage, the boy heard her reply, You said yourself that I have a power that will make me stronger. After saying this and running through the column of smoke, she exclaimed, So show me! How strong can I become? As soon as the girl said this, the couple heard strange sounds behind them, as if something was approaching, and they automatically grabbed hands. After that, something incredible began to happen. Seeing this, Kim Sun-han said, What the? How did this happen? What is this? This sight was the awakening of the girl's skills that she had been striving to acquire. Rays of light shone brightly around her hand, enveloping her body. After that, she saw system notifications that said, Cold skill, ice breath, has been activated. The registration of the awakened Park Aram has been completed. Seeing that her skills had been awakened, she happily exclaimed to Han Yujin, Uncle, I'm in class. After saying that, she continued, The skills are also cool, ice breath, and, to which the boy replied, Hey, you don't have to talk about your skills loudly, everyone will know. And Kim Sung-tan just stood there and watched the birth of a new S-class hunter with his mouth wide open. Having received her powers, the girl began to destroy enemies one by one. As she destroyed the monsters, she exclaimed, What do you think? That and more? When she had finished dealing with all the monsters in sight, she was heading back when she heard, Behind me! There's another monster! Proudly marching forward, having defeated a bunch of monsters, the girl did not have time to react to the fact that she was being attacked from behind by a monster that was under the rubble. She heard a message of danger. Beware! When she felt the touch of the monster's tentacles, the girl started waving her hand in fright, exclaiming in alarm, Mommy! Seeing the girl's incredible strength, Han Yujin and Kim Sung-han were frozen in place by the shock of what they had just seen. Just waving her hand in fright, the girl accidentally hit the monster against the wall, killing it. Her incredible strength was simply amazing. Seeing what she had just done, the girl exclaimed joyfully, That's S-class strength! Okay, I'll take care of everything from here. As she approached Kim Sung-han, she asked the hunter with one request, saying, Can I borrow your weapon for a while? To which he said, Yes. Having received the weapon of a high-class hunter, the girl quickly mastered it and was able to use it with ease, despite the fact that she had never held it in her hands. With a few swings of the spear, she scattered her pieces of ice everywhere, which flew in different directions, including at Kim Sung-han and Han Yujin, whom he was protecting with his barrier. Having mastered one skill, the girl acquired another, which was announced as follows. Hermes' shoes activated. Hearing this and rising into the air, the girl exclaimed, Help! With her new ability, more shrapnel from her attacks began to fly at her allies. Seeing this, Han Yujin called out to her in an angry tone, Hey, Park Aram! Looking at the girl who was hanging in the air, he said, Don't you want to be a little more careful? We're going to get crushed to death. Hearing this, she said, Oh my gods, I am so sorry. After saying her words of apology for what she had done, she added, I am not yet good at controlling my power. Looking at her, and remembering her from the past from which he had returned, Han Yujin said, As a hunter, she was called an ice witch, but that was not how she looked now. Now she was beaming with joy and happiness, radiating joy. And then the boy added, And she turned out to be a child who can smile like that. Looking at the girl, Han Yujin said, I didn't expect her to wake up so quickly. It would be perfect if she had an area attack skill. She doesn't have one? To which he heard the answer, Leave that to me. Hearing these words, Han Yujin saw that Han Yu-hyun had come to their aid, and with his square attack, he set fire to the entire area in front of him, destroying the monsters. As Han Yujin used his ability to destroy the monsters, he looked at his brother with a happy look and said happily, Yu-hyun! As time passed, his flames filled more and more areas, and the heat from them only increased, leaving the enemies no chance of survival.